Hello and welcome to It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi on Megapix Media. Joining me today is Kevin Cork, who is a certified financial planner with Calgary-based Absolute Group. Thanks for joining us today, Kevin.
My pleasure, Mario.
Well, today FP Canada put out a survey called Coping with COVID's Financial Impact. I wanted to talk to you about a couple of key points from that survey. First of all, 1/3 of Canadians feel they will never financially recover from this pandemic. My first reaction to that was, wow, is that not a lot?
Yeah, the interesting thing about that stat, and it's something we've obviously discussed, but the interesting thing about it is, first of all, it does mean that 2/3, so most people feel that they will recover. I think there are obviously ongoing changes or structural changes that have started to happen in society, and we're going to see those continue to move forward, and then obviously in many cases accelerate. But the interesting thing about that is somebody quoted this great thing that said, everything feels bigger when you're right in the middle of it. And I think that for a lot of us, what we're seeing is what's happening now feels bigger than what happened 10 years ago, only because it's hard to remember all those things that we felt and experienced, when the great financial crisis was happening. However, that's not to dismiss what's going on. For many people, this is certainly very, very disruptive, and it is going to make permanent changes in some unknown way going forward. Absolutely.
Now, the other thing that I found interesting here, that 42% felt that they were not in a strong enough position to cope with a second wave. Why do you think that?
I think for most people, the idea of having that second wave, and again, they're assuming that it's going to be the sort of total lockdown that we went through in the spring. I think for most people, despite what financial planners beg and dream and hope of people creating emergency plans, setting aside cash, making sure their spending doesn't get out of whack, all of those things that we in an ideal Candyland world would like people to do, very few people will actually do, because that's probably the least exciting aspect of finances. And that whole idea of not being able to have all your money to spend right away. So I think what this has done is brought that home to people, that this is exactly the kind of thing that you should be prepped for. And here in Alberta, one of the ongoing sort of prayers is, or what I used to hear all the time for sure, is just please, just one more boom, and I promise not to piss this one away. Yeah, that kind of approach.
Not looking good for another boom for a while. And you know what? Speaking of that, obviously, we've gone through the last 6 years now, of sort of a depressed economy because of the oil patch and the downturn in the oil patch. Many people lost their jobs, and many people in these times when they lose their jobs, they dip into savings and stuff. And I know from the survey itself, it showed that just more than 1/3 of Canadians were drawing on their personal savings. What does that tell you of what's happening out there?
Well, I would agree. I mean, here in Alberta, certainly here in Calgary, we've had, it has felt like a long time since there have been quote unquote boom times happening. And I think that's actually had a double-edged effect. The first off is that a lot of people's resources are fairly tapped out, and that's sort of what they're addressing there. But the second thing, which I see as a more positive thing, is that everyone here had already sort of conserved their spending. Unlike, say, freewheeling Vancouver or Toronto or other parts of the country, there hadn't been taking on a ton of debt. The focus had already been on trying to take care of some more of the basics. So in a way, we were more prepped for this downturn. Now, the idea of drawing on the savings to take care of sort of emergency situations or uniquely bad situations is actually exactly what financial planning is about. That's exactly what the savings are for. Sure, it might impact your retirement in 20 years, or it may mean you can't get the new car. You have to wait 2 years to get the new car. You have to wait a year to go to Mexico or anything like that. But the fact that people are actually drawing on their savings or on using their resources that they have accumulated is actually a very good thing.
So, Kevin, with people having many people having sleepless nights these days, what's your advice for people in these times, and even looking forward to deal and cope with their finances in these challenging times?
I think the number one thing we talk to people about, especially people that are obviously have lost jobs or in sort of very sort of extreme situations, the number one thing is to not worry about everything else. And the analogy that I've heard like Warren Buffett use and others use in the past is when you're right in the middle of the operation, you're not going to worry about whether this person is smoking or not. So the idea is to focus on the things that you need to take care of right now, and don't worry about your RSP. Don't worry about paying off your mortgage. Don't worry about don't worry about sending those kids to school. They can fend for themselves. You had to. In my day, no. The whole idea of just focusing on things you have to take care of, and then obviously there are adjustments to be made, and obviously there's things that you may need to look at. I mean, some of the things that are thoughts that are getting triggered are the idea of things like, do I need to get rid of this house? Do I need to have a lower value house to live on? Do I need to get rid of a cabin or a boat or other things that I've had? And hopefully it doesn't get to that kind of position. But again, part of our job as planners and advisors is to sit down and say, okay, let's take a sort of whole picture snapshot of what's going on and make sure that you are available to take advantage as best you can of things that are going forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, sorry, Marty, but just one last upside of that is that for a lot of people, the last few months have been a clear-cut exercise. Like we always talk to people about doing budgeting, but this has been a clear-cut exercise on what you actually need. And I think for a lot of people, they've realized that they have spent a lot of money. There's lots of money that they would normally spend going out or taking trips or buying extraneous things. And what this has been, and again, this is double-edged, but what this has been is a way to sort of acid test yours or stress test your spending to figure out what you actually need to live on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was great, Kevin. I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today.
It is my pleasure, Mario. You can call me anytime.
Okay, super. That was Kevin Cork, who is a certified financial planner at Calgary-based Absolute Group. This has been It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi on Megapix Media. Thanks for joining us today.